And I just want to open by welcoming you to this program, which I think is really important. I don't know about you guys, but I have a habit of coming up with all sorts of ideas for things I want to accomplish, and I'm a little lacking in self-discipline. And David, in his wonderful book, Winning Mindset, Psychological Strategies That Drive You to Succeed, has really covered all such questions and has some wonderful insights that I look forward to his sharing with us today. And so I just want to welcome you, David, and say thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Wonderful. And I wonder if we could start just by asking you to say a little about yourself and how you came to write this lovely book.
Okay. Well, I'm a psychotherapist. It's a second career for me, maybe a third career. I've worked in aerospace and done corporate teaching. And out of personal necessity, kind of found hypnosis and meditation and psychotherapy. Had a wonderful experience of altering my consciousness and then wanting to kind of find out how I could do that less spontaneously and a bit more under my own control. And came to find the Mind Mirror and you, Judith. I have been fascinated by, I really like to make things simple for people. I'm someone that does waffle in reality, but I do like to make things succinct and easy for people to understand. So I was writing a very big book, actually still sitting on my side here, about hypnosis and meditation and things like that. And one of my coaches says, no one cares about your book. It's an anchor around you that's going to drown you. Why don't you just write something simple people care about? And I thought, oh, screw you. And then I thought, that's actually a very good idea. So I set myself a goal in February of writing a book in 6 weeks and decided that rather than going into the depth that intrigued me, having not just an analytical engineering mind, but also quite a creative mind, I just decided to write the shortest book I could possibly write with the least amount of information in it, but then take someone still through a story. And this is what came out of that process.
That's pretty funny, David. You know, that you almost wrote this book on a dare. And you're joking and saying the least bit of information, but there's actually quite a lot of information in it, and it's excellent information. And so can I just start by addressing one of the questions that I think everybody wants to know the answer to, and that is, in the course of setting goals and accomplishing them and objectives and moving forward in life, how do people get stuck and why? What's that about, and how do our beliefs contribute to people getting stuck?
One of the stories in the book I haven't finished yet is a story of the chiropractor in my office. He's my landlord, very nice guy. He was telling me one year that he was at the cottage, kind of watching the kids jump off a huge boulder into the lake. And it looked like so much fun. So after he watched all of his kids do that, he climbed to the top of this boulder. And then, as he reported, stayed stuck there for 15 minutes. He couldn't jump, but he also couldn't take the walk of shame. He was in not a fight or a flight mode. He was in freeze. Essentially, something about imagining plummeting to his death or breaking his neck underneath the water or something was making it impossible for him to move. He absolutely believed that, at a deep level, believed that he couldn't do it. He kind of thought on a surface level, I think I can, but then found out he was wrong. And to me, that really is illustrative of the belief structure inside people that can cause them to feel stuck. Now, I do a thing in hypnosis that encourages muscle catalepsy. So to stick someone's hand to their head and they can't move it, or stick someone's hand to a wall, their foot to a floor. And as I was just demonstrating a few weeks ago after a conference I'd been involved in, a presentation, one of the participants that had been in hypnosis on the stage came to talk to me. And within a couple of minutes, he had his foot stuck to the floor and he couldn't move it. He could move the other one, but until I clicked my fingers, he couldn't lift the foot that was stuck. And I understand that the idea had made an impression in his mind. His belief in that reality caused the reality to manifest. And I explained to him afterwards, some people believe they're stuck in life, stuck in a job, stuck in a marriage, stuck in a circumstance, and that really the belief structures stick us no differently than if a hypnotist says your feet are stuck to the floor, try to lift them, finally stick. The harder you try to lift them, the more they stick. Just put someone in a bind. And I think we're in a lot of binds that we have our own beliefs, and obviously they're incredibly influential upon us. So I don't know how well that answered your question, but my attempt to use the same storytelling structures that are, all the way through the book and in the way that I do work is really the way I kind of feel inclined to deliver messages to you in response to your questions. So
Yes, and I think that's perfect. I mean, I've always felt, and I'm sure most people do, that it's stories that people remember quicker than they remember the naked principles. But yeah, I get it. And, you talked about blind spots and how people can have perceptions wired into the subconscious mind that can stop them from moving forward. And, I think about blind spots a lot because, of course, people who have them can't see them.
right.
And so, the only way that you can remedy, I found, a blind spot is either to keep your eyes out for it, and in terms of the way things do or don't manifest in your life, because a blind spot is a block, isn't it? And so if you can't manifest something, then there's either a blind spot or block or something that's in the way. And then the other way I've found that people can find, and I too can find blind spots, is to go into meditation and just say, what are my blind spots?
Right.
And that's really, I think, necessary for us to do because of something you talked about in your book, and that's the Reticular Activating System, the RAS. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, to my understanding, and I'm not a neuroscientist, just to make that clear, but I study things that interest me in that nature. This reticular activation system is described to me as a filter or kind of like a tap for our awareness. And given it's been fairly well documented that a human being can't really hold more than about 7 bits of information in their mind at any one time without becoming overwhelmed and possibly retreating into a trance. It's like spinning plates, that we have all these different aspects that we can think of, but there's not very many of them. And yet there are trillions of bits of data in the universe to be potentially aware of. And so our fundamental, or our brain's fundamental job is to keep the body safe, right? Make sure it has food so it doesn't die, make sure it's not gonna, freeze to death. It's mobilizing the body to keep the body safe, doing something for us that plants can't do. You stick a plant in the ground and, if it's the wrong environment, it dies. We can move and we can change directions, but we have to notice what it is that would make us better off to make a move. And so out of all of these trillion bits of sensorial data that we could be aware of, there has to be a way for the pertinent, important things to pop up into conscious awareness or to be noticed, because we all habituate to things. So we don't really notice the sticky notes we leave for ourselves to motivate ourselves. It just becomes a collage, it becomes wallpaper. And so it blends into everything else. The things that jump out, immediate concerns, things that keep us safe. Over and above that, it would be personal preferences to the person. So if I'm a stamp collector, and I'm not, but not that there's anything wrong with that, it's just boring, that if I wanted to collect certain stamps, my interest would make me hyper aware of the existence of a stamp in a store window where you might just walk past it because there's no shoes in there. And if that was the important thing to you, you would kind of notice what you like everywhere. Like a guitar player is going to notice exquisite guitars. Someone that knows nothing about guitars is not even going to notice that. The things that pop up into our awareness, we've trained ourselves to know that that's important. And so that we keep a little bit of energy spare for seeing it. I think it fulfills a criteria of what to let us become aware of or not. And so the job of it, as I'm led to believe, is letting stuff come up into conscious awareness that otherwise would have just blended away with everything else. And it's specific to us. We teach it what to let through the system to get to us.
You know, I love the way that you had, I don't want to call them games, but I guess they, in a way, were games, is that you had this box of all these letters on row to row. Did you happen to prepare something we could look at, or can you show us that in the book?
I'm just actually flicking through my working copy of this book right now to find that. There's a big one at the back. So this kind of thing.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And hold it there for a second. So, so our viewers can see that you can easily pick out the word positive there on the first line, rich, game. I mean, I'm revealing the content of my mind as I read these out as an example. But then as you go down, that there are some negative-ish words, aren't there? Like there's addict down there. And so this is wonderful for illustrating your mindset. There's difficult. So here I'm even switching, you know, and into the, I guess it would be the right prefrontal cortex of my brain, which processes things, thoughts and emotions in a negative way. And so according really to your prefrontal wiring, but also that RAS, the Reticular Activating System, which I think is the most fascinating part of the brain in a way, because I first read about it years ago in one of the books that Anna Wise had on her bookshelf in her office. And I believe it was one by Swami Muktananda. And it was the very first thing in his book, which was about Yoga Nidra. And what he was trying to get across was something that shocked me so much that I could hardly breathe because it's so powerful. And what he said, and it agrees exactly with what you said, but in different words. And he said that you can only perceive what you already believe. That's what the RAS filter does. That it filters out everything but what you already believe. And the ramifications are just enormous, because it means if you're not an open and receptive person who's willing to let in new information, and in fact has schooled that RAS to be open to new and related information, well, it's just not going to get through, because we're bombarded by so many perceptions, so many events, everything constantly. And the RAS will put it in the file 13 junk file if it thinks it's not important. And so this again, you know, so where does the RAS get its lens, I guess? Well, that goes to what you said about the subconscious mind. You know, so your beliefs, the perceptions that we have integrated and then become the lens through which we look at reality is also that lens that the RAS is responding to. So how does anyone deal with that? I mean, how do you, certainly you can say open and receptive, you know, and tell your subconscious to be that. But if there's a part of you, even on the unconscious level, that's saying, I'm scared of new things, then there's a conflict going there. So what do people do to root out those sort of obstructive thoughts and behaviors?
I'm not immediately sure about that, because I'm thinking right now that given that safety is the first and most important part of it, that there would be a lot of people that don't like spiders that would become aware of one in the room rather than ignoring it as if it's not there. So it's not all positive, right? It keeps us safe.
It does. It does.
I mean, I would have to believe that a certain stamp is really important in order for me to want to notice it. Like if I don't know anything about it, I'm not going to see it. And I don't know if it goes back to that kind of story about, I don't know who it was that was saying that the natives of an island didn't know what the ships were that were coming in. I find that difficult to believe. I'm not saying it's not true, but because they didn't have an understanding of what it was, they couldn't figure out what it was. Now, they're obviously not going to be looking for ships anytime soon, or they wouldn't have been back then, because it wouldn't have been a thing that they needed to know about. But if they didn't know what a ship was, you couldn't believe one existed.
Yes.
Right? So if you believe ships exist, then if you see one, you might know what it is.
Yes. It's a conundrum. It's a conundrum.
Let's do a fun experiment for a second. I mean, we have a few people in the room, right? We've got at least a few people. This is really, really quick, and it's something straight out of the book. I'm going to demonstrate what I'd like everyone to do, and it really will be less than a minute to do this, just to give everyone an experience of this. But I'm going to ask you to close your eyes, so it will look like that. Don't do it just yet. And then I'm going to ask you to say a word. Now, the word I want you to say will be a color. I want you to choose red or blue. And then you just kind of say that word over and over to yourself. And it would sound like this if you moved your lips, but you're not going to. Blue, 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 just blue, blue. And then I'm going to ask you to count to 3 to keep saying it. But when I get to 3, immediately open your eyes and look around the room and notice what draws your attention.
Okay.
Be open to drawing what draws your attention, a little like the way I choose a book when I'm traveling. Look on my bookshelf, I go with what pops out to me. It always ends up being the right book. So if we could do that now, everyone close your eyes and then say that word over and over to yourself in your head. And don't worry about what I'm saying, just keep saying that word, scream it, whisper it, say it softly, loudly, over and over, and keep saying it over and over. I'm going to count from 1 to 3 on the count of 3 and not before. Immediately open your eyes and dart your eyes around the room and just see what draws your attention. So you keep screaming and saying that word now as 1, 2, 3. And what did you notice?
Blue, blue, blue.
Is that the word you were saying?
How about you, Patty?
I had picked the color green, of course, so I saw everything green in the room, the plants, the leaves, the trees outside.
Yeah, that really works, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it wasn't a lengthy programming process. I just basically impressed the importance of the color upon your unconscious mind, and then open your eyes and see what you're drawn to.
So this is speaking, I suppose, to conditioning.
Yeah.
What goes in is what we perceive, what goes out.
Well, again, the stamp collector would have trained themselves to notice rare stamps. And that would be a conditioning process. It would be a habit. It would form a habit. And that our brain would then have the habit of noticing the things that we habitually see. And then bring it back.
That's a wonderful demonstration of a immensely central and important concept. That of
Imagine how it works for victims that always see other people as oppressing them and as problematic. In order to maintain their role of victim, it's incredibly important to their psyche that they notice perpetrators. Right?
That's right.
And that would be a habit, like optimism and pessimism.
I knew
noticing the bad in stuff.
Yes, I knew someone who, as their job, was to go around and find unexploded bombs.
Oh, wow.
Well, you can imagine that they were pretty paranoid.
Yeah, I've worked with a police officer that can't relax in an airport when they're going away on vacation because they're aware of the kinds of stuff that during their day-to-day job they look for.
Yeah.
Right? Hard to switch that off when it's that much of a habit.
So I guess we're saying here that one way to deal with your blind spots would be to say, I have no blind spots. I am free of blind spots. I'm open to everything I need to see in order to accomplish my goals.
Sure. Or simply realize that you might have a blind spot. I quite like when I had TV before I switched to just Netflix and DVDs, watching Bar Rescue with John Taffer. And this bullish guy would come in, and the first thing he'd say to the bar owner was, have you seen the cobweb up there in the corner? Like, how long's that been there for? And they'd be like, we clean every week. And he's like, are you kidding me? That's been there for like a year or two. Like, you come in every day and see that, and you just ignore it. Now I know that's not true. They don't see it. It's been habituated out of their awareness. So if they wanted to know, hey, what needs cleaning up in my bar, then simply telling themselves on the way to work, today I'm going to notice all the corners in the ceiling and check for any, spider webs and stuff like that. Now they might see it.
Well, so now we're talking about habituation. One thing I've noticed, and I suppose this would be the antidote to habituation, is that when I started to meditate, I noticed that I was becoming more aware. And of course, this is something Max Cade wrote about in his book. And he said that that the awakening of the mind is like becoming more and more aware of ordinary reality. Only the reality you're becoming aware of is not ordinary because you're noticing more deeply. You see colors. There's a thing that was always there, the cobweb or whatever, that you go, oh, I never noticed that before. So the awakening of awareness is literally an expansion to include more information.
Yeah.
So maybe
more filtering up somehow.
Yes, to let go of the filtering. Yeah.
I don't, this is probably not true, but it feels true right now. So I'm just going to say it like it's a fact, but be careful. It might not be true. Human beings are creatures of habit. There isn't anything but habit. We are creatures of habit. We learn if we like mice or not. We learn if we like brown bread or white bread or not. And then, we learn that we like to brush our teeth in the morning. Once we've developed a habit, then that becomes a part of our identity. I'm the kind of person that will brush his teeth twice a day at least, right? That is definitive of me, right? Or I might habitually wear shirts or cut my hair short. We're only habits. And those habits form who we think we are. And of course, then we habituate to all the other possibilities that we could be. But then we could start to open up our mind and start to realize that there aren't boundaries and there aren't limits, and we could be, almost anyone and take on anything. That is an awareness that we open ourselves up to. That was always there, but just we became closed off to it. We didn't see it. We habituated to the way that we think about ourselves and what's possible for us.
Yes.
Those dangerous habits.
Yes. Your book is so wonderfully encouraging. That in one part, excellence is a mindset, not a qualification. That's just one of many tidbits in the book that remind people that everyone with a normal mind can understand the concept that there are things in the subconscious mind that hamper us, that block us, that we have blind spots. But that if we are aware, if we become increasingly aware of how we get in our own way and take some steps to get out of our own way, then what's left is our ability to accomplish pretty much anything within reason that we want to. And so how do people get started? How do you set goals? You had in your book 6 categories of long-term goals. Mm-hmm. Wow. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it was just an idea that came to me over a pub lunch.
Over
a pub lunch. A beer and a salad and maybe some.
I see.
Just really feeling that I wanted to make it something clear that people could understand. And I think and then I made some jokes about Maslow's hierarchy of needs and that there were 5 of them, and felt like defending myself that I had 6 of these things or something. But really, I'm just breaking life down. I'm just doing what we do, and that's breaking things down into pieces. So instead of my body, I've got a hand and an arm, but that's an arbitrary, division. Every single one of those goals is, an arbitrary division. But really, I put it in there just to kind of let people know. I mean, you don't have to have a goal to make more money. You could have a goal to be a nicer person, or you could have a goal to improve your environment or your community. You could have a political goal. You could have a work goal. You could have relational goals. Like, I just didn't want people to think that a goal meant that they had to set themselves up for some specific academic achievement or an achievement at work. It could be a goal to put the toothpaste lid on. Right?
Yes.
And that be like, I'm neat and tidy now. A goal of tidying up, like a goal of learning to brush your teeth. And kids like to dip their toothbrush in water and pretend they've done it, right? But once they get into the habit, once you have a goal
do
of
they?
something and you attend to it.
I never knew that. I would have watched for that.
They do. Your kids.
Sounds like you might have done that, David.
No, they told you your RAS was closed off to deceit from children.
I love it. But I really like the way you had your goals. You wrote wellness, health, business or work, financial, investment, community, environmental, relational, romantic, personal, hobby. You know, I think most of us, if not all of us, struggle to with that circle of wholeness. You know, the idea that if you divide that thing into 4 quadrants, then you're going to have personal, friends in one, family in another, your work and hobbies, and then your spiritual endeavors in another. and it's easy to, I used to do this with classes and say, create this, to slice this up, not in quadrants, but however you actually do this. And I found that my body wasn't even considered. Poor body was carrying all the other goals, the mental, the emotional, the spiritual, and then the poor little body. It's just this little tiny bit there. And so I think these kinds of things remind us that why not have goals in every single one of these 6 things that you said? Why not? I mean, they don't have to be gigantic goals. And maybe in the end, what people really want to focus on is just one. I want to have that $1 million. But if you're not well, what good will it do you? I really appreciate it that you brought this up. Do you advise people to actually write goals, however small, however grand, for each one of those categories?
Absolutely. Well, my regulatory board for psychotherapy has kind of impressed this upon me, and prior to that, it was the association that I was on the board of, that if you don't look at your growing edge for the year and you don't set a goal to become a better listener or to be a more reflective person, or to, if you don't have a directive that you want to aim for your growth, then you're going to grow in whatever way the universe decides for you. Which might be a better thing. But since we like to think that we've got some kind of control of us and some agency, choosing the goal that we would like to focus on is really then opening up the RAS to focus on opportunities and steps that lead us towards that goal. So I don't think anyone has to have a goal, and I make that point in the book. No one's asking you, no one's impressing upon you the need to improve or to do anything. You are just fine as you are. If you're okay with that, I'm okay with that. But if you want to improve life, then becoming actively involved in the area of the improvement and thinking through the things that you want to achieve, I think is vitally important. So I would say that, 9 days out of 10, I start my morning with writing my goals for the day. I have, in essence, what I'm hoping to achieve this month, and I know what I'm hoping to achieve this year. And without having set that, how could I possibly notice the door that opens that would lead me to the thing I want?
Good point.
Right? I don't necessarily think, like in a documentary like The Secret, where they're talking about, imagine you've got this Ferrari outside. That's great. But if you imagine you've got a Ferrari outside, why do you need to go to work to earn money to buy a Ferrari? You've got one outside. And so I will notice the ways I could earn money to afford a Ferrari, or what, if a Ferrari was an important thing for you. Luckily, I don't really have that want. But yeah, we notice opportunities when we're focused on what it is that we want to have as an outcome. When you know what you want, you'll see the pathway. But if you don't know what you want, you'll be walking the paths you walk. Yes.
Life makes up its mind for you if you don't do it yourself.
Yeah, someone's going to be in control, and we like to feel as a species in control. So why not really extrapolate that delusion and make us really feel in control by thinking we really are?
However, I don't want to say deluded. No, I mean, I'm joking, but I start every day with a to-do list too. And I don't know if it's the same as your goal list, but I couldn't function without it. And I think it makes me infinitely more productive and keeps me focused. And in the end, a lot of what we're talking about here is based on the quantum ideas that if you concentrate your intention on something, then that wave turns into a particle and begins to manifest in physical reality. And if we're not specific, if we're not explicit, then we're just swimming around in a sea of, or a soup even, of self-delusion, or, possibly just confusion, and nothing ever gets done.
Right. And not that it has to.
Yeah,
Right?
it doesn't have to, but who doesn't want to accomplish something?
Exactly.
What
So we
thinking
really are speaking to, and my book speaks to, the people that want more than they have, but might be a little bit skeptical in making a step forward, or maybe they've heard of The Secret and thought that sounds like nonsense. What I wanted to do was really make it simple and obvious, reference science, and help people see that, oh, okay, so it's not just mumbo jumbo. Like, there's a way of wording this symbolically that just makes sense. It doesn't have to sound outrageous. No, it just makes sense.
Yes, and I like the way that you also talked about not just have your goals in words, also make them visual, or some sort of thing other than just auditory, because it makes them more multidimensional. And some people actually aren't that great with words, but they're good at making a vision board and putting it somewhere they can see it, or drawing pictures. Actually, some people take crayons and draw the reality that they want. And I'm not saying that it always works. I have yet to go on a cruise, and I did want to teach on a cruise, and I did have that on a vision board. Everything else came true, but not that. But on the other hand, I will admit that I did get invited to lead a cruise, but luckily it didn't work out, because people that did go, there was a lot of hurricanes. So maybe that's why it didn't manifest. I don't know, but I do.
You speak as if that has stopped.
Yes.
That was, well, I wanted to, but then this happened.
Right.
And then there would be a belief that, well, that's not going to happen. Then it's like, well, you could just reinstate that belief and that want if you wanted.
I could.
You don't have to, but you could.
I'm not so interested in it anymore, and maybe that was the whole thing, because I wasn't interested in it all that much. I saw a picture of a ship, and I thought, yeah, okay, I could go on a cruise. I still plan to go on a cruise, but not necessarily as part of work.
Right.
And I also like the way you talked about SMART goals, with the first letter of the following words comprising the word SMART: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-based. Right. So what about this time-based? Does that mean that you write down by July of 2011 or 2019, I want to board that ship that's going to cruise out into specifically the Caribbean on a 6-day voyage? Or is it less specific than that? Timing of it, I mean.
Precisely how specific, I'm not really sure. But just in general, if someone said, oh, I'm going to lose weight. Okay. When? When you start decomposing? Right? It's like, when? By the end of this year, or by the summer, I'm fitting into my bikini or whatever. To have the end, to know when you're doing it for, because we're so deadline driven.
Yes.
Right? So deadline. Someone asked me for a testimonial about a wonderful presentation they gave a few weeks ago, and but didn't tell me when they needed it for. So it's like, okay, well, there's a million things I need to do too, like cut my grass. But unless there is a looming deadline, well, then there's just a bunch of stuff. A life is always full of stuff. Not like a creative person's never going to be bored. But why am I going to defrost the freezer instead of giving the testimonial? It's going to be because one thing is more important in the moment. It's more temporally sensitive than the other. So I'm going to arrange things in a hierarchy in some way. I'm going to notice the things that are really important first. Like if I'm going to go to medical school and then become a doctor and then buy a Ferrari, there's no point in seeing the Ferrari first. because
Right.
it's in the wrong order. I don't have the money for it yet. I'm not a doctor. So we have to set things up somewhat, I think, sequentially, and not try to do the thing we're not yet ready for. Right. So what's important right now and what has to happen first. But back to your original question, yeah, I do think stating the date by which something has to have happened. Right. I mean, there's if let's just say Canada's going to implode or self-destruct, and I need to become a citizen of the USA to escape that. Well, I kind of need to know when it's going to self-destruct. Because if it's just kind of going to do that in principle, well then, yeah, maybe I'm going to go to the movies this afternoon instead of having my passport picture taken or something. But
Right.
we really need to know by when.
Right.
Does that
Yeah,
motivate us?
I agree with you. I work on deadlines as well. Too much so, much of the time. But it is a deadline that gets me moving. I often think about when I was a freelance writer many years ago and was living hand to mouth and had 2 daughters and worked for a peace group. And I mean, it was like, when is the money coming? And one night I was sitting down and thinking, I'm going to take a vacation. I deserve a vacation. I need a vacation. And I started to plan the vacation. And then I went to my checkbook and I went, whoop, nope, going to get back to work. Yeah, you have to, I mean, time and specificity make you realistic enough to allow something to manifest or not manifest, as the case may be.
Right.
And
I don't know who said this, but it's like the illusion of time stops everything from happening all at once.
yes, thank you. Yeah,
That would be a lot.
it would. Let me take you back to the first thing I brought up and see if we've uncovered any answers to it. How do undisciplined people become self-disciplined enough to achieve SMART goals?
I think there has to be a want or a need to begin with. And so if someone is, say, undisciplined and a problem keeps occurring to them because of their lack of discipline. Okay, so let's say someone's constantly late for work. And because they're constantly late for work, they're going to lose their job soon. And they need to address their own self-discipline. Well, in the circumstance that I've just given you, there are 2 egos involved. One, the boss that's going to fire you, and the other, you. And as I make the joke throughout the book that there's a voice in your head that you obey. And if you're arguing with me right now, you're proving it to yourself. And so if your boss tells you you're going to be on time tomorrow morning, you think, yeah, good luck with that. That voice is the dominant voice. All suggestions are self-suggestions. You know, you can do it, Judith, and you go, no, I can't. Then I'm not motivating you. But if you go, yeah, damn right I can, then you've got the sense that you can do it too. Now, if you're trying to achieve something that you want to achieve, but you haven't quite done it yet, then I think we can look back to early parenting. And we can also look at the fact that essentially you've only really got 2 emotions, good or bad. And you've only got 2 sensations, which is pleasure or pain. And they're just like food groups. We've got all these different variations and flavors and nuanced smells and aromas of stuff. And so you've got lots of different emotions, but basically pleasure and pain. And so if there is a impending pain that you're going to lose your job, that would be a stick that you would want to walk away from. Undisciplined people aren't necessarily really focused on achieving a positive thing like chasing the carrot. Oh, I'm going to work really hard and get this. Because human nature is to not want to lose what we've already got. When we're comfortable, we don't really want to work a lot harder to achieve something else. We get, into our status quo, our homeostasis, and boom, that's good enough. So I've noticed that the stick seems to be far more compelling to less disciplined people than the lure of something wonderful. And so I used to play a game on the way to school called Step on a Crack, Break Your Mother's Back. And that was pretending that your mother's spine would be snapped if you stepped on a crack between paving stones. That made you focus. That made you pay attention. That generated discipline of focus. Even kids with ADHD are very focused on video games because they want to get high scores. So, and they don't want their avatar to get killed. They have to win this game for something. So reward and punishment, really, to answer your question, I think, is the conditioning process. It's what Pavlov discovered. You know, you've give a dog food, it salivates. So you give it the reward, and it gets used to that, gets conditioned to that. I'm sure if you beat a dog constantly with punishment, it would know that you're an asshole when you come up to the dog. Like, it learns. And as creatures of habit, we want to feel good all the time. I don't think people want to feel bad. So we want to feel good all the time. So if we feel good as we are, but we need to achieve something else to avoid a pain, I think imagining the pain is even bigger would motivate us to change. Now, there's obviously a tipping point where it's just overwhelmingly worrying. You know, if I forget to dot an I in my sentence, then China is going to explode. Well, that's a big consequence. I don't want that on my conscience. And it can be crippling, and it can freeze people and stick them. I'm not going to write a word just in case I accidentally blow up, some country across the planet. I think it's very good for us to have discipline and to develop it. So I work with my clients in the same way. I've got someone that quite recently wanted to get their homework done before the weekend, so that when they went back to university on Monday, they felt really good. They had a great weekend. And so as they're sitting in their dorm room thinking about not really wanting to do it because it's more fun to not do homework, they just decided, you know what, I like popcorn. So if I get an hour of study done, I can have popcorn. And immediately now they're paying themselves like a parent would pay a child. You go out and do this chore for me and I will give you $1. And that starts to generate the reward for behavior. And of course, as the behavior is repeated, it becomes habit. Or the punishment, which is, I mean, it's kind of proven with the prison systems, punishment doesn't really cure people. But I think perceived consequences do. I don't know for a fact, Judith, you've paid your taxes because you don't want to go to prison. And I know that you eat food because you don't want to perish from starvation. You fill up your car with gas because you don't want to get stranded on the highway in the middle of nowhere. Avoiding the consequences is really what motivates us to do the things that are necessary. But if the consequences don't exist, like, if I don't do this, who cares? Like, it's not a big deal. Like, I don't think I cut my grass before winter, so I'm going to have long grass in the spring when the snow disappears. But I don't really care. Like, if that was a problem and I needed to win a competition for the best kept back garden, then either thinking about the prize I'm going to get for the competition or letting myself know, well, you can't really go out to work until you've cut the grass. Like, it's about enforcing some kind of discipline on yourself to be a disciplined person. Because we can all get away without doing anything, but that's not really much of an achievement. We need to see the reward of it, or at least we need to know that, oh my God, if I don't build this shelter on the island within the first night, then I'm probably going to die of cold. Or if we don't get this campfire started now before dark, we probably won't be here in the morning. Even an undisciplined person is going to start trying to start a fire.
Yeah, that's brilliant, David. You know, you've really clarified that concept of stick versus carrot. Even though I said I feel like an undisciplined person, I mean, I'm actually not as far as my work is concerned. I will work to an obsessive degree to get the most detailed work done at 5 o'clock in the morning, you know, or whatever it takes to get it done. But that's because I love the work. So that's a carrot. Now, where I fall apart is with, you know, carelessness, again, with the body, with food, you know, eating irrationally. Although I have tried to do what you told me one time, David, is to the secret of your cooking when you cooked for me once down in Virginia. David gave me the most wonderful advice for those of you who are occasional cooks. It says, cook whatever you like and then put whatever seasoning spices you want. If you want a Greek meal, put Greek seasonings in it. If you want to make it a Spanish meal, put Spanish seasonings in it. I had the biggest aha on that. I mean, I'm sorry, that's a huge aside, but I thought that was quite brilliant of you.
Essentially the same vegetables, though, right? It was just like, we'll just put carrots and broccoli and everything, but then either put curry sauce in there or put soy sauce in there, make a Chinese or an Indian dish. Same thing, same vegetables. Yeah. Have you not done much with that, Judith?
No, but my grandson's starting to cook. And He has the same brilliance, creative approach to cooking. He doesn't have to follow a recipe like you. Um, I I have the stick. The stick drives me with cooking. My stick is that if I mess it up, then I have to cook a second meal that night, and I don't really like to cook, so
Yeah.
it's a whole different world for me.
I was at a health conference a couple of weeks ago. I got asked to speak on a panel, and there was a guy that stood up to ask a question, and he was saying, "What do you say to people where they have, they intend to eat really well, and they get up and they're supposed to have a bowl of oatmeal with fruit in the morning, but then they'll get a phone call, and it's an emergency meeting. They have to go to Starbucks for coffee." And I just looked at him and laughed and went, "Well, one, you're trying to hypnotize me into believing that that's a real circumstance, emergency coffee, and." Two, I asked him to maybe just define for himself what is important in life. And then quite flippantly at the end of it said, and if none of that works, then I hope you get something like diabetes so that will force you to have to take care of yourself. And then I put my tongue in my cheek and winked at him so that no one would think I was a sociopath.
Yes, right. Wishing ill on someone, hexing him like a witch.
Right.
Yes, I mean, I get that. We're joking around a little bit, but right smack on track, because I just heard myself say that I don't like to cook. Well, I mean, I've convinced myself that I don't like to cook because I still do the old Southern thing that takes 2 or 3 hours. Too much time wasted. I could be doing other things like writing or playing music or something fun. But in actuality, what you're saying in your book is that there's a higher mind in us that has control over our beliefs. And I could decide that I like to cook. I could decide anything. And that is really the root of what you're saying in this book, is that first you have to decide that you can do it. And then second, you have to decide that you can clear whatever is in your way. And then you have to decide exactly what you want done, what goals you want to achieve. And you gave a couple of really nifty keen techniques. I loved your seeing a difference exercise, where you're asking people to pick up, close your eyes, take some breaths, and then actually see it happen. And you also suggested an exercise where, it's kind of like our awakened mind meditations, where you're looking into the future as it already having been done. And then you had another great technique where I really like this one, where you videotape yourself on your phone, telling yourself that you can do it, basically giving yourself a pep talk. Because that's what we're talking about, reconditioning, self-imposed limitations. And that's just the kind of thing that will remind you that, oh, right. Who is this voice that's been telling me that this isn't going to happen? This is the voice I want to listen to. So we're actually making the choice to be in control of our own reconditioning if that's necessary.
Right. That's one of my favorite techniques for a newly minted non-smoker, because I know that if life gets a bit stressful and they fall back into a habit, I would rather, as they're thinking of falling back into that habit, to watch a 1-minute video that they made while they were enthusiastic and excited and capable of continuing being a non-smoker. Because, as I said, there's a voice in your head that you obey. And so if I tell, come on, you can do it, Judith, it's only going to hit home if you go, you know what, David, I can. Right? And now, so let's go back to the cooking thing. And I was like, you can do this. You can just put different spices in. You went, yeah, I can. You got kind of excited about that. But then you didn't habitually re-engage with that. So you didn't kind of keep hold of that new epiphany. You
right.
Didn't so I'm going to cook a meal every day this week. Like, you didn't get into the habit of making it easy. And new things take longer. They're harder. They need a lot more conscious attention than ingrained habits. So you just have an ingrained habit of thinking you can't cook or you don't want to or whatever. And to change that would require your effort. Now, if you realize this, and instead of writing a journal entry, I've had this exciting epiphany today that I can cook very easily, it doesn't have to be a big deal, you may or may not ever read that again. But if you wanted to ingrain a habit in you of feeling really good about cooking, then a little video selfie of yourself talking to you, hey Judith, I know you might not be feeling like cooking today, but trust me, maybe you do this, it's going to feel fantastic. It's like, who better to hear that from but you?
Yes, it's brilliant. And really, I really love the idea because of the concept that, okay, so this is the way I am right now. Oh, but I could be like this. Well, that's got a charge on it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And we forget to be that happy, energetic, powered up person who really is probably the actualization of everything we want to be: joyful, articulate. When we go to make that video, we have to be in that person, which creates a line of force. And then we watch that video and there's another line of force. And it's literally rewiring us to our own higher state of consciousness, in which everything is possible, or so goes the theory.
And let's remember that emotions are contagious, right? So if you hang around with someone that's in a really bad mood, I don't know that it's going to be easy for you to carry on being really smiley and fantastic regardless of how their mood is, right? We have yawns. We have lots of things communicated to us through behavior and through emotions, so if we hang around with people in a really good energy, we're going to walk away with some of that in us. So when that should be done, for someone that's in the middle of an epiphany, oh my God, I feel fantastic. I don't ever have to have a problem with that thing ever again. I would just say, well, quickly make a video of that because that is gold. Like if we could just bottle it, as people say, that would be fantastic. Well, you can bottle it and it's called your iPhone. You press record on the video and now you've got a contagious emotion that you can go back and drink from again.
That's it.
But people are lazy and they're not going to do it.
Yes, and I think maybe one way for people to remember their effervescent self is another technique that you had. You had it under a category, I put a spell on me, which I guess is a takeoff on You Put a Spell on Me. And aren't there some songs about that also?
I put a spell on me.
And your musicality really came out a lot in this book. That gave me a kick. I could see you doing some wordplay with various song titles and parts of songs. So I totally enjoyed the book. But I also enjoyed your red jelly relaxation. Will you say a little bit about that? Because I think it's brilliant, and people can put a spell on, connect with the effervescence.
Yeah. The technique was something that was brought to my attention at school. It was a gym teacher that one day decided that all the boys need to lie on the floor in the gymnasium and go through this exercise. And it really impressed itself upon me in my, I was 12 or 13, somewhere around there maybe. And it was just amazing. He only did it once. I only heard it once. I never recorded it. We didn't have iPhones when I was at school at 12 years old. So I took the intention of it away. Now, I've spent the rest of my life using that whenever I've not been able to sleep or if I've wanted to put myself into a trance state, because I've just found it so incredibly effective. I used to have a little restless leg syndrome as a kid. And again, if I now go through this technique, that would stop. And so it really is, it's hypnotic in nature, or it might be meditative. I think kind of all meditation is hypnotic, not necessarily all hypnosis is meditative. But it's a devious technique that encourages full body catalepsy, rigidity of the body, a slowing of the pulse, a lowering of blood pressure, also very possibly full body anesthesia. So it's not mesmerism or something like that. It's just imagining what it would be like to have a numbing red jelly soothingly kind of drizzled or dripped over your toes, and that wherever you imagine that happening, those limbs would be immobilized by that anesthetic gel. And really, it's essentially a ritual You know, the moment we say I do, then this changes about me. Or the moment that I imagine red jelly on my feet, I'm not allowed to move my feet anymore. And so once the jelly's on the feet, then the feet become immobilized, and then someone would imagine their ankles, their calves, thighs, etc., up to their hips and waist, all the way through their body, slowly and progressively imagining the absence of feeling in those limbs and the absence of movement. Now, we kind of know that if you take a sad person and force them to smile, their brain is going to start releasing serotonin at some point, because this mind-body connection goes both ways. It doesn't have a specific start or an end. Either thing can cause it. You can encourage a hypnotic phenomena and put someone into a trance, or you can put someone into a trance and encourage a hypnotic phenomena. It doesn't really matter which way. And so this is just a visualization technique that shuts off external reality, slows someone's breathing, progressively relaxes every single muscle in their body all the way up to their head. And then once that's happened, I feel essentially that they've put themselves into the deepest progressive muscular relaxation they possibly could have done. And that would then really enable their mind to be quite open, right? You know, in the beginning stages of an awakened mind meditation, relaxing the body first and foremost. No one's doing awakened mind meditations while they're jogging. So getting someone into that state. And something I want to make really, really clear about the book that I've not really said is that I wanted this to appeal to the general public. And so I wanted to not use words like hypnosis or awakened mind meditation.
Right.
I wanted to make it a little fun and help people see that it doesn't really matter what you call it. And it doesn't have to be a semantic argument about, well, I don't know if that's hypnosis or meditation. Like, who cares? Just do it if it's useful. So I really kind of avoided specifying whether something was an NLP technique or a meditative technique. So I just put it in really, really simple terms, hoping that people would get the benefit from it without being stuck in the, oh, I don't believe in hypnosis, I'm not allowed to do that. Or I can't meditate, my brain keeps thinking thoughts. Yeah, you don't have to worry about any of that. If you relax your physical body, then you are going to be able to put a lot more of your awareness into your experience. You know, someone fiddling about and doodling isn't paying attention to the teacher. So the moment you sit there and you're quiet and still, all of a sudden, all of your concentration can go to something. So it was a very elaborate technique to give people a fun experience that would end up rendering their mind quite open to listening to self-affirmations or to doing a visualization technique. But due to the general nature of the book, I didn't want to give a specific thing that you should do at that particular point. And a couple of the early printings actually had the last couple of steps missing. So, but it didn't really make any difference. We've fixed that error and all the steps are there now in the latest copy of the book and the audio book that I'm publishing on my website.
You have the red jelly meditation on your website?
I've actually recorded the entire book at this moment. It takes about 5 hours to listen to. My web designer loves it. He's like, oh, it's so much fun listening to you read me this book, because he doesn't have to wonder how to phrase things, because I'm just doing it for him. So if I'm saying something sarcastic, you will hear that it's sarcasm. So any literal people won't be like, well, that sounds stupid, I'm not going to do that. No, I'm being sarcastic. In the audio, you can hear the sarcasm. But I did debate around what to do with the red jelly exercise, because the problem is, when we live in a very litigious society or culture, I didn't want people to listen to an audiobook in the car on the way to work and then blame me or sue me for that they passed out in traffic. So I'm very careful to read the exercise out, but I am looking, as I go into 2019, to turn some of the dry readings into actually experiential exercises with some background music that would be deep places that people could go. But that's probably one of the next phases of my the life I'll be living with this book for a while. Simple as and small as it is, it's going to occupy a lot of my life for a bit.
You know, would you suggest in the middle of or at some point in the red jelly relaxation that people repeat their goals.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, that's your point.
That is my point. It's
Okay.
a physical exercise to render them physically relaxed so that when they are at that point, they could turn their mind to a visualization or listening to an auditory affirmation or something like that. Or they could just use it to fall asleep if they're having trouble falling asleep. Or they could just use it as the meditation. Because it's a body scan too, right? And that's the trick in there, that as they're scanning their body whilst putting it to sleep, so much is happening. So but it should be, for me, there should be a point to it. And so the point for me would be, yeah, when you are in that open and relaxed state, you should access the theater of your own mind and go in there and watch some stuff that would help you.
Yes, I mean, it really makes a lot of sense. This is how the Yoga Nidra meditations work that the Swamis taught, is that once you have the body so deeply relaxed, then you have access to the unconscious mind and can plant things. I mean, that's where the RAS is, right?
Right.
I mean, it's the base of the skull, and it's operating the unconscious mind. And so here, this is where we could do the best rewiring, the best conditioning, the best self-convincing, all right there, and just a simple red jelly that would also give us, as you mentioned, all of the physiological benefits of a deep relaxation. Yeah, I think that's extremely important.
I think very much about the concept or the symbolism of an open mind or a closed mind. Right?
Yeah.
Your mind is either open or it's closed. Children's minds open constantly, just soaking everything in. And then they close down a little bit as they start to critique and become critical. You know, they start to believe less and less. Like, you can't convince a 16-year-old that Santa Claus exists. It's just too hard because they're closed off to the idea of that because you're talking nonsense. But what if Santa Claus did exist? Curiosity would need to be involved to open them up, or the shock of, yeah, well, what's that flying thing up there then with the reindeer? It's like, oh my God, the mind is closed off unless we can shock it or lure it into opening. And this is one way, because let's face it, there is no red jelly. So the moment you start to imagine it, you are hypnotizing yourself because you're responding to an idea.
Yeah.
Right, which is opening your mind. This is this essence of a Dave Ellman induction, which is the shortest induction in hypnosis, to get someone's mind open and responding to an idea that they've just been given. That's hypnosis for Dave, and I think for me too. So yeah, open minds can be programmed, closed minds can't.
Yes, there's a lot of interesting research on that. We'll save for another discussion. Certainly, red jelly yoga nidra meditation would be an extremely powerful tool, and could even be used, I can see, to upend those self-imposed limitations. While you're at it and repeating your goals, there's no reason you can't say, I can do anything that is for my own higher good, or I am unlimited, and make it multi-dimensional so that there's a spiritual aspect in there as well. Even if the goal is to quit biting my fingernails, which for some people it certainly would be. Toward the back of the book, you have a segment called How to Ace Your Goals. And I love it because really then you synthesize everything that you've talked about in the book and everything we've talked about here today. And you say affirming, ACE, affirming, conditioning, and envisioning.
Right.
So do you want to just pull us together in an integrative way and say whatever you might want to say about what's really going to work for people in terms of clearing whatever needs to be cleared and achieving their goals, however greater.
Different strengths and weaknesses. Not everyone's as creative as everyone else or as disciplined as everyone else. As we see in the discipline of NLP, some people are more visually oriented. I worked as a counselor in a college for a while, in a pre-med level college, teaching massage. I didn't teach massage, but I was their counsellor. And one of the things that we had to do every year in orientation was to figure out the primary the way that people would learn the best, their kind of primary self-programming technique, and it would either be auditory, where they'd have to listen to their lectures, or it would be visual, where they really get off on having colored diagrams and looking at pictures, or whether it would be kinesthetic, that they have to actually do the thing. And we've only got 5 senses. And if you aren't processing anything through your 5 senses, you won't have any idea that you're dead or not. Because that is reality, your 5 senses, nothing but that, essentially. And so they're all routes to programming, because they are all input devices. It can go in your ears, in your eyes, up your nose, your fingers, your body's going to sense things kinesthetically. Essentially your 5 senses. So it was really a clever acronym to come up with, a clever pat myself on the back acronym to come up with, where rather than saying, well, you have to have a visual technique, an auditory technique, and a kinesthetic technique, I just thought people would want to ace goals. And if they can think in terms of affirmation, telling yourself you can do it, telling yourself, the voice in your head that you obey, first and foremost, yeah, I can do this. Because if you're thinking, I can't do this, well, you're probably not going to do it very well. Catch this hot coal. I can do that. No, I can do that. A different sensation. Then the conditioning part being creating the habit, where you would reward yourself for good behavior, give yourself consequences for not being committed to doing what you need to do. Basically forming a habit. And then envisioning, kind of being really inspired by Max and Anna's use and your use of the word sensualization, in that it's not visualizing, is it? I needed a word that started with E, so envisioning is there. And I think you can envision what a smell is like much clearer than you can visualize what a smell is like. Because in some way it's saying use your imagination. And we have those 5 senses both through our organs, our eyes and ears and whatever, but we also have them inside through our imagination. So you can create a reality in your mind. And I love the work of Max and Anna in talking about, involving all your 5 senses. And so I just kind of thought, well, if you're on a diet, you can't really reward yourself with smells or tastes. So let's just keep it to the kinesthetic pleasures and the auditory things that and the visual things, and have it in that sphere. So it's essentially just an acronym to keep people remembering that using as many of your senses in the programming of your goal as possible, and not just in the imagining of yourself being in your own mind, being in that wonderful environment, house of doors kind of thing, or wherever you are. Right? Bring all the senses in. So just a way of getting people to kind of think through a checklist of what's their dominant input that they prefer, and how to just use as many of them as possible.
I was going to say, could you say what is your last word, but I think I'd rather show it. I mean, it's just a wonderfully encouraging book, and the very same extremely accessible personality we've seen in you here is in the book. It's funny, but it's also very practical. Sometimes authors will go too much one way or too much the other way, but you've really made this enjoyable, and you're so encouraging the whole way through. When I finished this book, I went, yes, I can do it. Yes, I can. And I highly recommend it to everyone. Sit with it, enjoy David's prose and his very clever games, and especially the red jelly meditation. Even if you don't feel that you have an immediate goal that you want to work on, or if you don't feel like you can accomplish a goal, or you don't feel like you're worthy of a goal, or whatever it is, if you have this sense that there's some reason I need to do this red jelly meditation, it's calling me, I feel 100% sure that not only will it yield whatever it is, whatever blind spot, whatever block is in the way, will clear that and help you come up with something that's important to work on. Because after all, that is what we're here for, is to accomplish things. And who knows, you might even meet David with a little smile and a wave down there in the red jelly meditation. And I certainly hope that everyone will meet him in the book, and wish you the absolute best with it, David. It's just a wonderful book. Thank you for writing it, for contributing to people's well-being and giving them clear path. If we want to be our effervescent selves, and I know we all do, I would just highly recommend that everyone pick up their phones, find their effervescent selves, and meet David up there in cyberspace and enjoy hitting the target in a winning mindset. Thank you so much, David, for being with us and sharing your wit and wisdom. I would just ask you to speak about your website and whatever people might find there.
Fairweather.ca. I know people have a .com habit, but I'm in Canada, So .ca is me. I believe there's a link there that people can download a chapter in a PDF form. And there would also be a link to the book's website, which is unfortunately winning-mindset.com. I think winningmindset.co, but I couldn't get the .com. You know, it's a popular phrase. But there I'm going to be publishing the audio version of this book shortly. It's just a little bit of tidying up that needs to happen. And so there's some free resources there for people to use. And of course, if anyone reads it, listens, likes it, just got a video this morning of someone that actually went out of their way to record 2 minutes of admiration about the book. So I'm just starting to compile things like that. And the beautiful review that you also gave me is going to appear on that website too. So davidfairweather.ca is me. And the book has its own ego and its own place to play. So it's like one of those dogs that you can follow online. It's there for people to utilize. And I do intend on putting a lot more information and possibly some research and stuff like that as the year progresses. Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. We wish you the best. We wish you many, many testimonials and awards, the well-deserved rewards and awards as well. Thank you so much for being with us here, and we look forward to the next time.
Thank you. Always a pleasure, Judith. And thanks everyone for listening.
All right.